Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's live discussion for Mr. Robot Season 3, our mid-season discussion. I'm joined here by Akton Tamko. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about Mr. Robot.
Of course, I'm always up for talking about some Mr. Robot, and I'm definitely looking forward to talking about what is so far a really great season. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, definitely. And I see Colonel Doomsday, of course, in the chat saying he just finished watching episode 5. Well, just in time to talk about.
We were talking ahead of time that who was going to be in the chat. Well, it'll probably just be Cardinal Doomsday, but but which is fine. We're always happy to see you, Cardinal Doomsday. All right.
Yeah, so because we actually hadn't had a chance to talk about. Usually we like communicate through email, or whatever, but I haven't really got your feelings on season 3 overall. So do you want to start with that? So what are you thinking of season 3 so far?
Oh, I think it is up through the first 5 episodes, at least, easily the best season, because you go back to the first 2 seasons and like about episode 4 or 5 are kind of crappy, and I think season 2 might have even started a little earlier. I don't remember, but I feel like it's been like one good episode after the other. Episode 4 was, as you said in your review, a little bit of a little slower, but it was still pushing the story forward. So episode 4 would have been my least favorite out of the 5, but it was still good. It was still pushing the story forward. It was still very important. It wasn't a lot of filler. So I'm loving the pace of the season so far. I'm loving. We're going to get into more detail about each of the storylines, but I'm definitely loving what they're doing with the interplay between Elliot and Mr. Robot. I'm loving all the Dark Army stuff. I'm loving pretty much everything that they're doing. I hope that they can continue doing this throughout the whole season, and it doesn't like fall flat on its face in the end. But if it continues at this pace, I think season 3 will easily be the best season by the end of it.
Yeah, and I'm in complete agreement with that. I think, yeah, I mean, again, it depends on how the second, because we're only halfway through, but if the second half lives up to the first half, and even better, it actually improves upon it, then this, easily the best season of Mr. Robot, and it's turning out to be that way so far. So fingers crossed, hopefully it stays that way, because I did like, as much as I like season 1, it did, like both seasons 1 and 2 did sort of dip in the middle, and most seasons of television tend to be honest, they sort of had these filler episodes in the middle and the story dips, and this is the middle, and we've got one of the most amazing episodes. Like this last episode that just aired is the highest rated episode on IMDb, and many people are talking about this episode as if it was the best episode that ever aired for many show.
Yeah, and actually, I haven't got a chance to watch your review on that episode yet. I don't think. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? How well do you agree with it on that? I mean, that's a little bit of hyperbole.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of hyperbole. I did really love the episode. I actually think my favorite episode of the season was episode 2 still. I did really like episode 5, and I love the cinematography. There's a lot of things I loved about the episode, the high stakes, high tension. But I did say, I still gave it a 10 out of 10, so I'll make that clear. But I still thought that the Angela storyline dipped a little bit for me. It got a little less sort of intense, and I kept wanting it to go back to Elliot for the Angela stuff, but I still liked it though. I still thought it was good.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, it's interesting how it shifted perspective there. I'm kind of wondering if we're going to go back and see Elliot, how he ended up in the building. I thought, they showed those dudes coming in with masks on the elevator. I was certain one of them was Elliot, like wearing a mask. And
I kept thinking that too.
Sneak in there, but then it wasn't. It was just our way of shifting over to Angela. So, it was a very interesting episode, the way that it was all shot. And basically, I think the entire episode was in or right outside of the E-Corps building, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't think they ever left that area.
See, ever since season 1, the highest rated episode, at least on IMDb, was episode 8 of season 1, White Rose, and this episode finally overtook it as the top episode. So fans seem to love it, but
It also aired commercial free, so I think that's.
Yeah, and I can see why too. It would apparently I've heard in some areas like Canada, apparently they had commercials, and that sucks for those people because I can see why they would do it commercial free because of the one continuous shot. Throwing in commercials there would really screw with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was really curious how you would think about it because I know we kind of disagreed on season 2. I think if I remember correctly, you liked it a lot more than I did, but I still liked season 2. I still thought it was great, but I do talk in my reviews about how much of an improvement season 3 over and how season 2 featured too much filler.
I wouldn't say I liked it a lot more than you did. I would say I liked it a little more than you did.
Okay. Yeah, because
I liked it a lot more than all the people who were like, "Oh, Mr. Robot jumped the shark. I'm not watching it again anymore." Like all those people, I would say I liked it a lot more than that. But I definitely saw some flaws in season 2, especially the fucking the sitcom episode, the Alf episode, and like I mean, I hated it. I just did not like that episode. So there were definitely and there was definitely a lot of filler in season 2. And I agreed with you, by the way, on what you said about the Tyrell episode this year should have been at the end of last season. That's if it had been placed there, then I think season 2 would have gotten a lot higher ratings. A lot more people would be saying it was good, and there would be a lot fewer people going, "Oh, it sucked. I'm not watching Mr. Robot anymore." If they had paid that off at the end of season 2, I think it would have been much better. Though for me personally, where I probably disagree with you a little bit is that I would say better late than never. We needed to see that eventually. So if they're not going to do it at the end of season 2, I'm glad that we got it now.
Oh no, that's not a disagreement. We're totally on the same page. I totally agree with that. Like I do agree, better late than never. And I did say it. Like I still really liked that episode. I thought it was great. I gave it an 8 out of 10, so that's a high rating. I still thought it was really good. It added a lot of texture to season 3, but I didn't think it was amazing, best thing ever. And had it aired in season 2, I would have thought it was amazing, best thing ever. So
yes, and it definitely belonged at the end of season 2, and I think that because we needed that payoff. Like Tyrell was gone the whole time, like we needed that payoff. And I think in between that, I think you said in your review that if it had the episode ended when Elliot gets in the car. With Tyrell, and then the next episode is that also ends with Elliot getting in the car. I mean, we would lose some of the stuff at the season 3 stuff at the end of that. They would have to, like when Angela's telling Tyrell that he's about Mr. Robot, basically.
Yeah.
That stuff, like they would have to work that into season 3 somehow in a different way. So it would have had to have ended with Elliot getting in the car with Tyrell. To catch up with the previous episode, and then you go into the finale, the final hour of it. That would have been perfect as far as I'm concerned. Like to get back to that same exact scene, but from Tyrell's perspective instead of Elliot's perspective, and then have the finale. I think that would have been so good, and they blew an opportunity by not doing that. But at the same time, I'm glad they did it this season. I'm glad we got that at all because I don't think the show could have ended without us getting that. Like, so I'm glad that we got it.
Yeah, and it's really funny to hear you say that you totally agree with me because I suspected even when I was writing that review, I was like, "Oh, Apkin's going to completely disagree with me when I say this." For some reason, I thought you would think, "No, it deserves to be in season 3, not season 2." I don't know why I thought that.
I don't know why you thought that. Because I think it would because we needed that payoff in season 2. Maybe it's because not getting that payoff didn't bother me as much as it did other people. Maybe that's why you thought that, but it would have been better if we had gotten that payoff. Sure.
Yeah, it's just because like all of season 2 they were teasing Tyrell, and you're wondering, like my curiosity was at the highest. Where is he? What's been going on? What happened in those missing days? But by the time we get to season 3, I'm kind of not as interested anymore. It's kind of we've moved past that.
Well, I guess that's where our disagreement comes in because I don't feel like I was less interested in it or we've moved past it. I felt like we needed it. It would have been better if it was last season, but we still. Well,
I mean, I agree with your sentiments. Better late than never. That it is. If they're not doing the season 2, then they do have to do it in season 3. So I do agree that we did need it. It's just I wasn't as interested as I was before.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right.
All right, cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it, and just we'll go by the characters. That's the way I usually like formatting these. So let's start with Elliot and Mr. Robot. Now, at first I was thinking, oh, maybe doing Elliot and then Mr. But you can't separate the two. It's the same guy basically, and I think. Mentioned before that my favorite episode this season so far was episode 2, and I think that's because it focused a lot on the Elliot and Mr. Robot dynamic, especially that scene with Krista and when Mr. Robot comes out and confronts her. Like I was in awe of that scene. I thought it was absolutely amazing. And I love we're exploring more this dynamic. And it's an interesting dynamic they have this season where the two of them are so separated on the issue because they're actually fighting against each other. It's so funny. So they never are together anymore. Like in season 1 and a lot of season 2, they were together and you got your interactions. And they had this really static where one takes over and the other leaves and are never together anymore. So I think this dynamic really works, and I think it's really interesting. But what are some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree exactly. I do. And it's interesting in this latest episode how Ellie was like, imagine Mr. Robot. That was like, it's a very fuzzy line like that. Oh, so that wasn't really Mr. Robot, but Mr. Robot really doesn't really exist anyway. So that's not actually Mr. Robot. That's just my imagination. So that was kind of interesting how they did that, but it works. And it fits into the whole dynamic this season where I would have been disappointed if it really was like Mr. Robot because I like how they're separated. And I think if they're going to be brought back together again, it should be at the end of the season. And there might be like, I think there probably should be like some big confrontation between the two of them. So I think they do need to get back together by the end of the season. But I do like the way that it has been so far this season. And I really, really love getting to see Rami Malek play Mr. Robot a little bit more.
Oh, yes. It's so great that they're actually shifting perspective. They're playing with perspectives more this season than they had in 2 previous seasons.
Yeah. Yeah, and I said in my review for that episode, the second episode, which I don't think you caught in your initial review, that when Elliot was confronting Darlene, like, we had been set up with the previous episode with Angela saying that, I can tell you're Mr. Robot because you look me straight in the eyes. And like, so when I saw, that Elliot confronting Darlene in episode 2, I knew immediately it was Mr. Robot because of the way he looking straight into her eyes and it was like really intense. I was like, that's Mr. Robot. And then we get confirmation because it switches to Christian Slater. So, I mean, it's really subtle, but they did set it up in the previous episode. Like, this is what Mr. Robot looks like. And then they did it on screen, which I thought was brilliant, the way that they delivered with that. And then sometimes it is a little hard to tell. Like, I heard that some people in the most recent episode, or maybe it was episode 4, where Elliot is confronting Darlene in her apartment. There's some people thought, well, maybe this is Mr. Robot, but I think they did that on purpose to try to make you wonder, is this Mr. Robot or is it Elliot? But I think very clearly was Elliot in that scene. But they did fuck with it a little bit.
And I like that. I think that really works. That you don't know at times which one is. And actually, I did with the thing with Elliot staring her in the eyes. Actually, I just forgot to mention that in my review, but I did notice that too when I first saw it. When he was staring directly at her, I was like, "Oh wait, that's." And I love that they're doing that. They're playing with perspective, and so we see more from like the outsider's view because the outsiders, the characters around Elliot, never know who's who, which one is which. So I'm glad they're putting the audience in their perspective as well. Sometimes they could sort of fool you. I actually get the impression that if it wasn't for the fact that Mr. Robot's played by Christian Slater, that they could just write off, just have Rami Malek play both parts all the time. But I think it's because it's Christian Slater, they have to find ways to keep him in the show.
Yeah. And I would almost prefer in some ways that it was Rami Malek all the time, except that, then we have to have Christians. And you need to see Christian Slater. So
he is really great in that role too. Yeah.
I mean,
I think
Yeah,
they are maybe minimizing his part a bit, but I think that's great because I love seeing Roland Malik play, like you say, play the Mr. Robot aspect of it, so we can see what the other characters are seeing.
yeah, because we can see it from their perspective because they don't see Christian Slater. Like only we, the audience, see that. So I think I think it's great that we are seeing what the other characters are seeing at times.
Now, I was going to ask about. There's a theory I sort of had before, at the end of season 2, that Elliot was sort of taking over more than in the past, and Mr. Robot was sort of losing power because of Elliot sort of becoming mentally healthier. And I think maybe that in season 3, maybe that means that's why there's such a divide between the two of them. And that's why when he was talking to Krista, that's why Mr. Robot lost a lot of sort of control and stuff like that, which is why Elliot was actually able to pop up in the whole during Tyrell and Angela sort of meeting. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good theory. I don't know if the show is ever going to definitively answer that or not, if they're ever going to really they may leave this ambiguous till the end. I don't know, but I think that's a very good. That makes a lot of sense. It's very consistent with everything that we've seen. So yeah, I do like that theory.
And I would actually be okay if they did leave it ambiguous. Like I would be perfectly okay with that if we never got a definitive answer.
Yeah, and I would too. Like I don't feel like we need a definitive answer. Then it's up for interpretation, and then you can say that that's what happened, and you wouldn't be wrong. But I do think that I do like that theory a lot. It does seem very consistent with what we have seen.
Yeah, and Colonel Doomsday says, "I hope they keep punters guessing." Punter, I'm not sure what he means by that, but yeah, keep everyone guessing is probably good. But yeah, one thing I noticed about the last episode that I thought was really interesting, and it's really subtle in there, and you sort of have to catch it, is when Elliot was talking to Darlene, and you hear his monologue, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm glad she doesn't know that I miss Mr. Robot or that I want to see him more." So I think that's a heavy clue on why sort of Mr. Robot's still there, and maybe why he was able to take over for that whole long weekend, is because part of Elliot's subconscious actually still wants him there.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't even catch that. So that's
right. So that, because I was wondering before of why he was able to, because as I said, Elliot seemed to be taking more control over his body since he's becoming healthier. However, we get this whole 3-day weekend or whatever where Elliot was completely MIA. So it made me sort of wonder why it is that Mr. Robot was able to take over. And I thought maybe it's because part of Elliot's subconscious actually wanted him to take over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot to that, because I feel like if Elliot really, really fully wanted to get rid of Mr. Robot, like with all of his being, like I feel like he could. But I think Mr. Robot is around because there's part of him who wants Mr. Robot to be around. So part of him needs Mr. Robot.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing about that is that Krista often doesn't want to get rid of Mr. Robot. Like when Mr. Robot confronted her, he's like, "Oh, you want to kill me?" And she's like, "No, I don't. I think you're a healthy part of Elliot's." I think maybe her goal is sort of to integrate the two so they're not so separate as they are now.
Yeah, I think so too. But Krista also is not aware that Mr. Robot is trying to enact stage 2 and kill people. And Elliot is trying to stop him from killing people. Like Krista's not aware of that part, but it makes sense that she would, not being aware of that, want to integrate the two of them.
And if I remember correctly, I'm not sure if I remember this, but I believe when we talked in season 2 that you thought maybe stage 2 would be resolved by the first couple of episodes of season 3. But are you happy that they sort of pushed that back a little bit?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I said it at the end of season 2, but this season I was thinking the way that they were doing it, that we wouldn't get it until the end of season 3. So I was actually surprised we got it so quickly. And it seemed like they did a time jump. I didn't know that we were all of a sudden. Maybe I just wasn't paying close enough attention to how time was moving, because they do there's very subtle clues of what the time is. Like they will do a few days here, a few days there between episodes, and you have to pay close attention. But I was thrown off. I didn't realize we were already at stage 2 all of a sudden. But then going back and remembering what they were talking about in the previous episode, I do realize that with what's his face, Irving was talking to Tyrell, that they were talking about Monday is when this needs to be done by, which I think I think I didn't quite understand that was when stage 2 was happening. I thought we were still a couple weeks away, so I was just like, whoa, we're stage 2 already. We're at that day. And then you see on the news the Congo annex going on, and we knew that was going to be in the same day that they were going to do stage 2, so I actually was surprised when we got it as soon as we got it. I was starting to think we were getting it at the end of the season, but now we got it halfway through, or at least part of it. I still think there's going to be there's still more things with stage 2 I think we need to see. Like, did the people get out of the building when Ellie called and said, there's a bomb? Did they evacuate? Did they take that seriously? Were people killed? What happened? Did it even happen? Because Angela, had to enter the things correctly, and Irvin was like, "Did you enter it correctly, Angela?" And like made me believe that maybe she didn't. We also don't know what Elliot was doing in there. He suddenly appears and confronts Angela, but was he trying to stop it? I mean, was he successful? Did stage 2, was it even successful? I guess we don't even really know that yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if it was successful, I think we're meant to believe it hasn't actually happened yet in this timeline. So this is something I talked about in my review, is how I feel like this past episode, episode 5, was kind of like a part 1, and next week will be like a part 2 that will sort of resolve all the lingering things. And I do hope that, like you said, I hope that this next episode begins with seeing Elliot's perspective of what he was doing while Angela was doing her things. But either way, I think we're definitely going to get a resolution of what happens with stage 2.
Yeah, which means by episode 6, stage 2 will be done, whether it happens or not. And then, so we have 4 episodes of something else, which we're probably, I don't know when you want to get into this topic, but then that's when we might get the time travel parallel universe or whatever that other thing is. Might start getting set up for that. I don't know.
Well, are we ready to move on to our next topic? Have we sort of talked about Elliot and Mr. Robot enough?
Yeah, I'm ready to move on.
So the next topic I was going to talk about is Angela, and that's actually when I was going to bring up the time travel, the parallel universe stuff, because I think that's most prominent in her storyline, because we see this massive change from her where she's completely on board with White Rose and her plan. And she keeps alluding to this plan, that the way she was talking to Elliot in episode 1 about what if we could bring our parents back, what if we could change everything, and it's sort of alluding to like time manipulation, I would say. And then she had a conversation with Irving about, do you really believe this is true and whatever? And he says, well, science can do some amazing things, so I totally believe it. So like, I don't know, like, what are your thoughts on this whole
yeah, that scene really like put me on board that we're going in that direction. When Irving was like, oh, well, science can do amazing things, like look at these ribs, which is kind of a fun analogy. And which, by the way, I don't think Irving really believes. Whatever it is, I don't think he gives a fuck about that, whether it's true or not. Like, it doesn't matter to him. Like, I think that he is motivated by money or other thing. Like, I don't think he's very good, as we've seen, like what he did with Tyrell, at telling people what they want to hear.
And manipulating people. Yeah.
Manipulating them. Like, so I think that, honestly, he doesn't give a fuck whether it's real or not. Like, he doesn't even care. But he said that stuff because he knows that Angela really, really believes in it and is really motivated by it. So he's manipulating her. But yeah, when he said that definitely made me think that there's something, time travel-y, parallel universe-y, and some weird thing going on.
Yeah, I like that we haven't that they're holding off on this. By the way, and I'll be surprised if they even definitively answer this by the end of the season. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but I wouldn't be too shocked if they delayed, and I'd be perfectly fine with that too, because this is something like this sort of major. I hope maybe they hint at it a bit more towards the end of the season. Maybe take season 4 to get more into it, but yeah, because apparently there's a 5-year plan for the whole show. So hopefully they need to sort of pace it out good, which I'm perfectly happy with. But I sort of hope that just like in episode 3, they went back and showed what Terrell was up to. I hope we get more eventually to see what exactly it was that White Rose showed Angela and what she saw to win her over. And I actually hope, and this is very maybe silly of me, but I hope it has something to do with that fish. Maybe they bring the fish back to life because they made such a big deal. Save the fish, and the fish is dying.
It might have something to do with the fish. I mean, maybe the fish gets brought back to life because White Rose manipulates time in some way or something. Who knows? But I'm curious to see how what this actually is going to be, because the way Angela talks, it definitely seems like some sort of time manipulation, but there's also been hints of parallel universes. They mention a parallel universe specifically in the first episode, and then apparently there was this Easter egg in episode 4. Are you familiar with this? I heard this from another podcast.
I'm not sure.
Where Darlene is... if you look closely on the screen, she is downloading what appears to be like a BitTorrent or something of the movie Shazam starring Sinbad. Are you familiar with all that concept? Sinbad.
I recall the movie, but what I don't get.
Well, that's the thing. That movie doesn't exist. There's a Sinbad, the actor from the early '90s comedian. Yeah. There's a whole group of people, and I've included in this, who swear they remember a movie where he played a genie called like Shazam, but that movie does not exist. And Sinbad will swear up and down he's never played in that movie, and he's never played a genie, and there's no evidence that movie ever existed.
Oh,
so
really?
This is part of a theory that a bunch of people have shifted from parallel universes, and it's called the Mandela effect. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But there's also a bunch of people who swear up and down they remember clearly Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 80s. And he didn't. He eventually got freed and became president of South Africa. But they call it the Mandela effect. It's this theory that somehow a whole bunch of people like shifted into a different parallel universe. And that's why people remember Nelson Mandela dying, and people remember this movie of Sinbad playing a genie that never actually existed. So this is a real-life parallel universe theory.
Wait, I'm just Googling it now because I'm pretty sure this movie exists, but it just had a different actor.
Well, there was a movie with Shaq playing a genie.
Shaq, yeah, that's what it was.
A lot of people realistically, I think a lot of people just got that confused, and for some reason, a lot of people think it was Sinbad. But I think most people think there were 2 genie movies, like one with Shaq and one with Sinbad. I think that's what most people are, and that's what I thought too. I thought there were 2 genie movies. Oh, so right. I don't know why so many people think that, but I remember this movie too. But there was one with Shaq playing a genie called something similar, like Shaq Zam or something. I don't know. It's called something different. But a lot of people thought it was 2 competing genie movies, but it never. So anyway, it's this parallel universe theory. I kind of don't buy it personally, but it's a real life parallel universe theory, and apparently Darlene was downloading this movie with Sinbad playing a genie that doesn't actually exist. So that's a little Easter egg about parallel universes.
I mean, it could be. Yeah, because in a way, this whole show has kind of established itself as like an alternate timeline, because you had the 5/9 hack and you see Obama's reaction to it and stuff like that. So it's already, and they even mentioned this bit in season 2 that this is sort of because obviously that's not what happened with the 5/9 hack. It's going to have a sort of domino effect. And so things in the show is going to work out differently than the way they do in real life. So it is interesting to think, what if they actually interpret that as a parallel universe and explore other parallel universes?
Well, yeah. What if they somehow tap into our universe where the 5/9 Act doesn't happen? Like maybe this is a parallel universe to us, like the Mr. Robot universe. So maybe they'll somehow tap into the real life universe.
But there are like some things in the Mr. Robot universe that are in keeping. Well, like I noticed, like just in the like I think it was this last episode. There's a little headline at the bottom. I was reading them, and one of them, like when they did the CNN newscast, and there was one of them said like they're looking for John Boehner's replacement. And if I remember correctly, this would be right around the time that John Boehner left as Speaker of the House. So that's sort of in keeping with like real life. So it's interesting that they keep some aspects of that.
Well, that would be consistent with the parallel universe. Like,
Yes, exactly.
some things are the same. So, I'd be very interested to see. I feel like there's got to be some aspect of parallel universe in there because they're dropping all these hints. But at the same time, it does seem more similar to time manipulation because Angela's like, well, what if we could change things? So I'm curious to see exactly what it is, what's going to be.
Yeah, that seems like it might be a mix of it. Maybe I'm not sure. Maybe they'll find a way to bring some people into the parallel universe. Yeah, it's very strange. But yeah, I love that they're being very. What's that? Sorry, go ahead.
I said maybe they're talking about merging their universe with another parallel universe where the whole Washington Township thing never happens, or because she was like, what if we could make it so that never happened? So maybe they were going to merge the parallel universes somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, that would definitely be interesting. And I love how they're being purposely ambiguous about this. It's pretty good. Now, getting back to Angela in particular, like I said in my most recent review that I'm actually really happy with what they're doing with their character this season, because last season I know this is one of the disagreements we had. I sort of thought her whole storyline was playing Price and doing karaoke and stuff was really boring. I didn't really care for it. And this season I have no complaints about her. I actually really love the way that she's totally on board with the Dark Army and she's sort of playing Elliot. And I think I'm actually surprised because they introduced her in the first season, and it seemed like in the second season to me that they were just trying to find ways to keep her relevant. But now I think they found it, and she's completely relevant, and I totally see her as a main character.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had a higher opinion of her storyline in season 2 than you did, but I definitely see that I love the character development, the way that she's gone from being kind of like this innocent, naive person, like on the outside, who had no idea that Elliot and Darlene, the people she's known her whole lives, are planning this huge thing, to where she's now completely like the opposite, like where she's the one who is trying to enact this, this thing, and they're trying to stop it. So and it made a lot of sense though how they made that shift happen. It was very well developed, and it just didn't come out of nowhere. So I love how they've changed her character, and it's really worked well for me over the 3 seasons. How her character has developed to where she's at this point. Now we still don't know, as you mentioned before, like what the tipping point was, what exactly White Rose showed her. But I do believe we will get that. I think we're going to get it by the end of the season, like in the finale. I think we're going to get it, but I don't think we have to. I think it would be fine if we don't. I think it would be fine if we don't, but I have a feeling that we will get it in the finale this season. Just what it was that she saw, which would be cool. But even without knowing what the tipping point was, it still makes a lot of sense that this character has changed in this way, and I love it. I love how her character has developed to where she's now like the complete opposite of what she was in season 1.
And I absolutely loved her interactions with Mr. Robot, where she, like you said, like she tell the audiences that she can distinguish between Mr. Robot and Elliot. And I love when she was at the meeting with Tyrell, she knew instantly when Elliot reappeared. because she saw him looking around. And it was interesting when they were like on the bus together, and she was talking to Mr. Robot. It's like, don't talk to me like we're friends. We're not friends. So she obviously thinks of him as someone different than Elliot. But then she follows that up by saying, when Mr. Robot asked, well, how can you justify lying to him? It was like, how can you say I'm lying to him? I'm looking right at him. To me, that seemed contradictory. Like, how she actually views them as two separate people, but actually the same person.
Yeah, I mean, it's very complicated. I mean, they are two different people, but the same person. I mean, so, I mean, I think that's just how she views it. They really, when it comes down to it, they are the same person. Like, they're not. It's not like a different body, like Christian Slater comes out of Elliot, and now there's a separate person walking around. I mean, they truly are the same person, and I think that's kind of just how Angela views it. They're two different people within one person. So,
yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I just in the chat, Charles says, but she still has emotions. She's not totally dark, and it's good. And I completely agree with that. I think they're sort of making her dynamic. And I said this in my last review of how at the end of the last episode, where you see she was completely like devastated and flabbergasted and all the experience she had to. And I think it was amazing acting performance, by the way, by the actress who did that. And I love seeing this sort of dynamic in Angela, that even though sometimes, like, you complain in season 2 a lot about her blank stare, and a lot of people complain about it, but you can see the complex emotions in there. And I think that's coming off nicely.
Yeah, definitely, and you can see she still has some humanity. She's still concerned about, are the people going to die? We're going to make sure that we clear them all out. Although she's really fooling herself by even believing Irving. I think it's kind of ridiculous that she. So obvious that he's lying. He's just like, oh. Yeah, we're gonna clear those people out. Cool. Like, I can't believe she buys that. But I think it's because she's just so like determined to see this through, because she really was taken by whatever it was White Rose showed her. She really wants that to happen, like really, really badly, more than anything. So she's willing to like put aside the fact that Irving is obviously lying.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because although I agree that he's probably lying, I had sort of more doubts. I was sort of more had doubts. Well, maybe they're actually intending to clear out the building, but I think you're right. It's like, it's very obvious that they had no intention of doing that. But it does make me wonder how they're going to treat, how Angela's going to react. Well, I'm assuming stage 2 goes forward, but if it does, how she would react to all these people being killed.
Well, yeah, but my other question was, I mean, they got somebody calling them up on the phone, Elliot, saying, there's a bomb in there, get out. Like, usually any place like that, you take bomb threats seriously. Like, you don't fuck around. You get out, you call the police. If somebody says there's a bomb in there, almost any building anywhere, you evacuate, and then you ask questions later. So I would think they would evacuate just simply based off of that. But I don't know if that's what's going to happen. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah. I said the same thing in my review, that people take bomb threats absolutely seriously. So I think it would be out of character, unrealistic for the show if they didn't. But I don't know if that will lead to a total evacuation. So yeah, that's something interesting to hear. Now, Colonel Doomsday asked something really interesting in the chat. He says, "What did the Chinese guy give to Angela? Thoughts?" And the Chinese guy, I referred to in my review as Sandwich Guy, although because every time you see him, he's wearing this hazmat suit. He's eating. I don't know if it's a sandwich. It might be like a kebab or something else. But
I thought he was eating like a burger.
Was it a burger? Okay,
that's what I thought it was, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it might have been a burger. I always call him Sandwich Guy, because every time we see him, he's eating, and I think it's hilarious. And so my thought, and I said this in my review of what he gave to Angela, was another sandwich or another burger for her to eat. That's what I thought.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty clear to me. I thought he was just giving her another whatever he got. I thought it was like fast food or something. To me, it looked like it was Wendy's or something like that. But
I assumed it was Red Wheelbarrow.
Red Wheelbarrow, yeah.
To keep up with that theme.
Yeah.
But yeah, because some other people, I watched this other review where people were thinking that maybe it was like a hard drive or disk or something, computer hardware or something like that. I was like, no, it's not. It's food.
Yeah, it was just food. There's nothing more to it than that. I don't think it's anything to read too deeply into.
Yeah, I think it's funnier to think of it that way. It's food. I love sandwich.
Yeah, I think that's all it was. It was for comedy. Like it's not anything to read deeply into. Yeah,
but it is. I'm really like fascinated to see. I think maybe most of all, what I'm looking forward to next episode is to see how Elliot reacts to Angela after he found out what she's up to. And it does make me think if there's going to be a new dynamic between the two characters after stage 2 either happens or doesn't happen.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I mean, we're dipping back into Elliot a little bit, but Elliot just found out that 2 of the people he cares for and is closest to the most both betrayed him in 2 different ways in the very same episode. So it's going to be interesting to see how that affects Elliot going forward. He found out both Darlene and Angela betrayed him. And I love the way that episode ended, by the way, with Elliot going up to Angela and being like, is there something you wanted to tell me? And I do think we're going to go backwards a little bit first. I really do feel that way, that we're going to go back and see what Elliot was doing in that building and then follow up on that scene. But I can't wait to see the result of this and what Elliot and Angela's relationship looks like going forward. I'm really looking forward to that.
Cool. All right. So let's, unless there's anything else you want to say on Angela, we can move on to the next topic.
Yeah. Yep,
yeah, cool. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about Tyrell and Johanna Wellick next. Now, first of all, I guess we'll start with Johanna because I watched your video when you were like clapping and cheering. Yes, thank you for killing her. And it's funny, I was watching another sort of podcast, which I know you've watched. I don't know if you listened to this as well, but that guy was actually very critical of the death. He's like, oh, I don't like this. This is a bad thing. I don't like that they killed this main character off right away. It seemed too sudden. But I tend to lean more with you. Like, I agree. Like, I wasn't cheering as much, but I was like, oh, thank God we don't have to deal with this character anymore.
Well, it does render her entire season 2 a storyline pointless, but I thought it was pointless anyway. So, I mean, well, it does make it so we really wasted our time with her because she just gets killed. But I don't care. I'm glad she's gone. Like, that storyline was going nowhere. It had nothing to do with anything. It was a distraction. It was, in my opinion, the worst part of season 2. I said that in my season 2 review. Like, you want to talk about filler, you want to talk about shit that had nothing to do with anything. It was that bullshit.
Yes, I completely agree.
So just to get, and the dude, the boyfriend dude, bartender dude died too, right? If I remember correctly.
They didn't mention that. I think the bodyguard survived though.
Yeah, the body. So there might be some little bit of follow-up on that might have something to do with anything. But I'm glad they're gone. And also, this creates this new tension. Like, Tyrell doesn't know that she's dead. And so what's going to happen when he finds out? And yeah,
I mean, well, that's what I was going to say. I was going to disagree with you slightly that it's completely meaningless because I think it affects Tyrell.
Oh, no, it's not. Yeah. No, it's not completely meaningless. But her death isn't meaningless. It makes her whole season 2 storyline even more meaningless than it already was.
Well, it just shows how she died, though, which I think is kind of interesting because she thinks she'd be all, manipulating in the cold and just control people, but it ended up coming up and biting her in the ass. And there's a bit of poetic justice to that I kind of like.
We still could have spent much less time.
Completely agree with you there. Completely agree with you.
Season 2. If that's all it was just to build up for her to get killed and to affect Tyrell's character, then we could have spent like 1/4 of the time with her that we did and still had the same effect.
And I totally agree. And I think this is another example, and season 3 has been doing this a lot of, it seems like the writers like really took in the criticism, really examined season 2 and why it didn't perform. They said, okay, what do we need to do differently? And they did everything like right. They're doing everything right in season 3 to correct everything they did. And part of that, I think, was to kill off Johanna, because apparently, like they said in an interview, that they always knew they were going to kill her off, but they didn't know when exactly, and it happened a bit sooner than they kind of thought it would.
Yeah, well, I think it worked well, and I wonder, do you think that Irving was lying to Tyrell when he said, Tyrell was talking about Joanna if she's still alive, and Irving was going along with it, or do you think he doesn't know? Because it seems like the Dark Army knows that she's dead, most likely because Santiago knows, and we now know he works for the Dark Army. So
because of that. Yeah, because of that, Irving, I think, he seems to be pretty high up in the food chain in the Dark Army. He seems to be like the PR guy, for lack of a better term, like the human relations. So I think he knows. And it's like we talked about earlier. Irving likes to manipulate people and tell them what he wants to hear, and he doesn't want to tell Tyrell that she's dead because he knows that would completely throw him off and fuck everything up. So when Tyrell's like, "Oh, let her know that we'll be meeting in this place," and let her know, she's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that." Yeah,
it was Ukraine. I don't know why the Ukraine, but that's what he said.
Yeah, it's a weird place, but yeah, but yeah, so that's why he was like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll let her know. Yeah, I'll take care of that for you." I think he was completely full of shit. I think he knew damn well that she was dead.
Yeah.
And again, this is like similar situation to the, like, if they did kill people and lie to Angela about it, the other shoe would drop, how would you react? So it's the other thing is how the other shoe is going to drop when Tyrell finds out that Johanna is dead, and how that's going to change everything, how he's going to react to that.
And he's also I think he's going to know that that Irving and the Dark Army lied to him, I think, about her death. Because I almost kind of picturing it in my mind that Irving is just going to tell him, like, "Oh yeah, by the way, your wife is dead, and we knew all along," or something like that. He's going, "What?" But after that, they won't need him anymore, so they won't care. But I don't know. It would be interesting. I'm really interested to see how this plays out. So her death definitely did serve a purpose in that regard, just how it affects Tyrell. I do agree with that.
Yeah, see, I think her death was like a win-win. It's like, to get rid of her, get her off the show, and on the other hand, it actually affects the storyline as well in an interesting way and sets up this new dynamic with Tyrell. I mean, they can't retroactively go back and erase all the boring, pointless scenes we got with her in season 2, so I think this is the best way they could have handled it in season 3.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. That was the best they could have done. And I was cheering and clapping, like, yes.
I wanted to answer Colonel Doomday asks an interesting question in the chat. It says, she got such shitty taste in men. Why does she go for the wimps? And I think the answer to that is because she's very power hungry. She likes to be in control and she likes to manipulate people. So that part of her character sort of makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it is going to be interesting that Tyrell no longer has this sort of master over him, this person that he's doing everything to please, for. So it does make you wonder how he's going to react without that, I guess, burden over his shoulders.
Yeah. Yeah, you mean the Elliot, now that he's separated himself from Elliot, Mr. Robot, is that what you mean?
Oh, no, I mean from Johanna once he finds out that, yeah. Once he finds out that she's dead.
Because he seems to have, like, he's in the place where they're like, fuck Elliot now. Where before he was like, "Oh, Elliot, we're going to be gods together. I love you," and all this stuff, which is really Mr. Robot, not Elliot.
Yeah.
And, but now he's like, he's fucking crazy. And then Irving gives him the speech, well, you don't need him to be gods with you. You're the god. Which just shows what a master manipulator Irving is, because that's like the perfect thing to say to Tyrell. And you can tell Tyrell's like, "Oh yeah, I'm the god." Like, I mean, it was perfect manipulation of him. But I'm wondering if do you think he's really, really, sworn off Elliot / Mr. Robot, or do you think that he's gonna forgive him and want to work with him again.
That's an interesting question. I honestly think it could go either way. It could go where he's done with them and he wants to be the god now, so that's going to cause him to cause issues down the line because he thinks he's all that. Or it could go where something happens where he gets back in Elliot's good graces and wants to reconcile with him. So I could honestly see it going either way.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think you're right. It could go either way. I'm just interested to see where that goes. I could see like a big, kind of a confrontation between him and Elliot. Like even really the real Elliot, not Mr. Robot Elliot. I mean, it's interesting. And it's interesting that Tyrell now knows that they're two different people.
Yes.
Yeah. I wonder how much he fully really grasped that. It seems like he kind of knows, but doesn't really understand. I don't know.
What I think is funny, though, is that he's dismissing Elliot as crazy. Oh, you're nuts. I have nothing. And earlier when Mr. Robot was going to shoot, we saw the flashback to the events of season 1 where he was going to shoot Tyrell, calling him Looney Tunes. And both of them are being really hypocritical because they're both crazy. And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, that is good. That's funny. Yeah, the Tyrell's calling Elliot crazy.
And there's something I really liked about that part where Tyrell, they're playing. He thought it was like divine intervention. He thought we're both gods because the gun didn't go off. And then we find out that later in that episode where Irving's like, oh, your gun was jammed, but I fixed it for you. So it's sort of like, it's kind of like they were toying with the question of, is this really divine intervention? Is this really like fate or not? And then at the end, they're like, nah, it's not. Totally not. It's got nothing to do with it. He's just crazy.
Yeah.
Cool. So any other thoughts on Tyrell before we move on?
No, I mean, I think we covered like the flashback episode at the beginning of this video, so we don't probably need to go more. So I think we're good.
Cool. So I wanted to move on and talk about Darlene, and we can also talk a bit about Dom as well. Now, Dom is interesting because she's not appearing as much this season so far, but I think her appearances have been a lot more sort of poignant, and they've all been sort of tied with Darlene because we see them working together. Now, the question I have is, do you think anyone, like watching the first episode, before it was revealed that Darlene was actually working with Dom, do you think anyone had any doubts that she was totally working with Dom? Because it seemed like they were trying to play it off like nobody knew.
I thought it was pretty clear by the end of season 2 that she was going to be working with the FBI. Like I didn't have any doubts at all. Like, I mean, when Dom showed her the whole like, the thing on the wall where they knew everything. And like, I mean, I thought it was a foregone conclusion she was going to be working with the FBI. So no, I don't understand why anybody would have any doubt that she wouldn't be. So I don't know why they even try to play it off like
I know that was a bit strange. I think I even said that in my review. It's obvious she's working. Well, it made me wonder like how Elliot didn't know, because Elliot seemed to know, there's someone tracking us, there's someone following us, and he seemed to be somewhat aware. So it seemed maybe he just didn't want to make that connection that Darlene could be involved with them.
I think that's what it is. He didn't want to make that connection. I definitely I think he was in a denial a little bit there. And that makes sense to me. But yeah, as far as the audience goes, like there's no reason to pretend like she's not working for the FBI.
Yeah, and I did love. You hadn't seen the review I did for the last episode, but I loved the way they did this reveal where Elliot was like totally one track mind. We had to stop stage 2, and then all of a sudden I'm working with the FBI, and I love the like audio cue they play where it's just a pop and you can't really hear, because it really puts you in Elliot's mindset where he really feels betrayed. Like, what the fuck? But my sort of thinking of it is I thought he was going to say, oh, you're working with the FBI. I thought he was going to use them to try to stop stage 2 then.
No, I think he just was feeling really betrayed at that point. that would have actually been a logical thing to do. Okay, hey, let's get the FBI to stop stage 2. But I think he was just feeling like, what the fuck? You were working with the FBI? You lied to me all this time? Like, I think he was just preoccupied by that and not really thinking about, hey, I could use the FBI to really stop stage 2.
Yeah, and I do agree that does totally make sense for his character, but it does have me curious if he is eventually going to go that route.
I think I've always felt like and I've never really seen the clear path to how we were going to get there until maybe a little bit more this season, but I've always felt like somehow Elliot and Dom DiPiero are going to end up on the same side. And I think we're heading in that direction. Like, I think that he is going to end up working with Dom DiPiero because they want the same. Ultimately, they want the same thing, which is to stop the Dark Army and stop Stage 2 and stop all of that. So I think that eventually we are headed in that direction. I think Dom DiPiero is meant to be like kind of more of a hero than an adversary in the show.
Yeah, I always got that impression, like from the way they treated her in season 2. But it's interesting going down that route because there's a danger in that, and that's something we kind of glossed over. We haven't talked about yet. We mentioned it briefly, but Santiago is working with the Dark Army. So if Elliot started working with Dom in any official capacity, he would be aware of it, which means the Dark Army would be made aware of it. Yeah. So there's sort of danger there. So it would be interesting to see how they handle that.
Well, I'm wondering when Dom is going to finally find out that Santiago was working for the Dark Army.
Yes.
It's got to be. If this is one thing, if it does not happen by the end of season 3, I'm going to be pissed. Like, I think it needs to happen by the end of season 3. I think it took too long for them to even reveal that Santiago was working for the Dark Army. That also should have been revealed in season 2. Like, I think they dragged it out for too long. I thought it was ridiculous. Like, I thought, Santiago might as well have just been like going around wearing a T-shirt that said "I Heart Dark Army" on it. And Tom would be like, "Why are you wearing a T-shirt that says "I Heart Dark Army"?" And he'd be like, Army of Darkness, the movie. I love that movie. It's great." And Tom would be like, "Oh, okay, well that makes sense. So, do you want to go after the Dark Army now?" And he'd be like, "Oh no, let's not go after them. Let's so obvious." I can understand Dom not knowing it, but it took too long to reveal it to the audience. It should have been revealed to the audience by the end of season 2 because it was ridiculously obvious. So I think Dom needs to find this out by the end of season 3, in my opinion, and then be able to move forward from there. At least by the finale, if not before.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely could see him dying before the season's over.
I think he's definitely going to die. But I think I want Dom to find out first. And I actually would think it'd be great if she's the one who killed him, honestly. But I think that she needs to find out first, and then he does need to die. I think his death is probably a foregone conclusion.
Because it was interesting when Dom was, interrogating that F Society, that fake F Society guy, and she brought up White Rose, and of course the partner. I don't think the partner is like working with the Dark Army. I think he's just naive and drinking Santiago's Kool-Aid. But I think he would. It's interesting if he finds out that she's pursuing that avenue, and that he would totally lose his shit and be like, "What did you do? Don't do that."
Yeah, I mean, it seems like only a matter of time before Dom would have to figure out he's working for the Dark Army.
Yeah, I mean, they portray her as this really smart detective, what you're doing, but yeah, I do hope that's something they cover more, and that's what I would like to see more out of her for the rest of the season, for her coming to realize what's actually going on.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment too. You had mentioned at the top of the segment that we're seeing less of Dom, but I feel like less is more. Like, we're not seeing any stupid, like, sitting there talking to Alexa and all that fucking bullshit. What we're seeing is all relevant and important and moving the story forward. So even though we're seeing less of Dom, like, less is more. Like, we're seeing
absolutely.
So, and I do think we will actually physically see more of her too.
When she becomes more relevant, yeah.
When she becomes more relevant, yeah. And I do think we will see more of her. But I'm so glad, like, they've gotten rid of all that crap with we didn't need to see with her talking. I mean, I guess it was supposed to be like developing her character a little bit, but maybe the tiny bit of that we could have had just develop her character, but it was too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. Oh, yeah, and Cardinal Doomsday points out, or having a wank. I forgot about that scene. That was another completely pointless. Yeah.
Cardinal Doomsday, are you serious when you're asking what's Kool-Aid?
Oh, well, he's from Australia, so he might not know.
Do they don't have Kool-Aid in Australia?
No, they don't have Kool-Aid in New Zealand, so they probably don't have it in Australia either.
Oh.
Like, it's just, it's when I was saying drink the Kool-Aid, like, it's a saying. I don't know how this saying came about. It means, like...
Yeah, I always thought this because Kool-Aid used to be associated with the electric acid test when we would put LSD in the Kool-Aid, and like maybe people used Kool-Aid to control people's minds or something. I don't know. I always thought it had something to do with that, and that was what the drinking the Kool-Aid had to do with. But I could have just made that up.
It's kind of like cordial, but it's more sugary and bad for you. Just answering Cardinal Doomsday that says it's like cordial, which is something we have over here. But yeah, it's a lot more sugary. But yeah, wow, what was it? Oh yeah,
we're completely sidetracked now. We're completely off the rails now. We're talking about Kool-Aid. Okay. All right, so let's.
So I wanted to actually ask about Darlene, because there's something interesting that I actually didn't. I noticed in my second viewing of this last episode is that in the previously on, they point out from a previous episode of Dom saying to Darlene, "If you tell Elliot about you're working with us, the deal's off," which I had forgotten about, because so that brings a really interesting dynamic. Now she has told Elliot, like, how is this going to affect her deal with Dom going forward?
I think that Dom was not going to be happy, but I think ultimately she's going to realize she needs Darlene and Elliot, and so I still feel like the three of them are going to end up working together. I think there's going to be a period of time where Dom was like, the deal is off, whatever, but it could be maybe that she starts suspecting that Santiago is working for the Dark Army, or something is going on, even if not that specifically, that there's something fishy going on within the FBI, that she may be starting to like, okay, I got to step outside of the FBI a little bit, and I may have to go rogue a little bit. And that's kind of what I foresee is not that Darlene and Elliot will be working with the FBI, but that Darlene and Elliot will be working with Dom DiPiero. And that she may like have to start stepping away from the FBI a little bit to actually continue with what her mission is. So I could see something like that happening. But I do think initially, Dom was not going to be pleased. But I do think ultimately they're going to end up coming back together again, is what I see.
Yeah, and I definitely see that happening too. But I was just wondering, like, I was just thinking of something for the first time. I wonder if Elliot is actually going to find out that Santiago is working with the Dark Army, and that's how Dom is going to find out.
Yeah, I mean, does Elliot's not even aware of Santiago yet at this point, though, is he?
No, he's not. But he could find out that there is a head FBI guy working, that the Dark Army is corrupted, and once he finds out Darlene's working with the FBI, then that would set off trigger warnings.
Yeah. But I know we focus a lot on Dom DiPiero. What about Darlene? Episode 4 was a lot of people calling it Darlene centric. I didn't think it was quite as Darlene centric as the episode from season 2, where we didn't see Elliot the whole time. But it was definitely we're getting a lot more into her character, and I felt that episode last season really set up nicely for Darlene being more in the forefront. And I did I did really like that in episode 4, we really did get a lot of her perspective and like how she kind of feels like she's, between a rock and a hard place. And she's got no way out. And the way that she resolved it in the next episode was just say, fuck it. I can't deal with this guilt anymore. I'm going to just tell Elliot the truth.
Yeah. And it was interesting, a natural process to see that guilt sort of build, because at the start of the season, Elliot's sort of avoiding Darlene, not because he knows the FBI, just because he mistakenly thinks that she's a trigger for Mr. Robot, which I don't think is the case.
Yeah, no, I don't think.
But in that episode, we see them reconciling and actually coming close together, which I think is just brought up the guilt in Darlene even more, to the point where she couldn't take it anymore. And that's probably why Elliot felt so betrayed as well, because he just learned to reconnect with her, and then he finds out that she was like betraying him this whole time.
Yeah. And I do think, I do think that he will forgive her and they will end up back together again. But it's interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works out, because as I mentioned earlier, he's got 2 different people who he's really close to have both betrayed him, but they've betrayed him to opposite sides.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really interesting dynamic. And I love how Darlene's like, oh, Angela betrayed you. And she'll, well, you betrayed me too. So I kind of get the impression that they might sort of make up or work together at least immediately, but there still be this uneasiness between them. Yeah.
Well, Darlene and Elliot ultimately want the same thing. It's just that Darlene was, working with the FBI and lied to him about it, but really she wants the same thing as Elliot wants. Whereas Angela now is on the exact polar opposite of what Elliot wants. She wants what Mr. Robot wants. So, it's be very, very interesting to see how they work this out, this dynamic between the 3 of those. But Elliot kind of between Darlene and Angela.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I was just thinking, I had a really great question, but it sort of slipped my mind. Something about, I can't remember now. But anyway, any other thoughts on Darlene then before we move
on? No, I think we're good.
All right, cool. So let's go move on to our final topic and talk about sort of just Irving and White Rose and the Dark Army and all that. Now we've already talked a bit about Irving and how he's really good at manipulating people and stuff, and I think this is another thing of what makes season 3 so great. We introduced, because I heard beforehand they'd be introducing this character, and I was like, I don't know about this, but as soon as we saw him, like, he had probably the best introduction to any character. The scene where he was at the Red Wheelbarrow bitching about something really minor, like, well, it's the principle of the thing. Do you want me to go back outside and get back in line? That was such an amazing introduction, and the way that he was just like on the phone casually, well, is he dead? And just
yeah, and the girl behind the counter was just like, oh. Well, is he dead? Okay, and it's just like he didn't stop, like he was in the middle of the conversation with her, and it was just like seamless right into the conversation. Oh, what, is he dead? Okay, well, all right, well, if he's not dead, all right, okay, I'll be right over there. Just and then he gets right back into the conversation with her again, and it's just a seamless transition. It was really well done, and the whole thing with him in the coffee mugs, like the different you have a different mug for the different people, and like you see this heartfelt scene with him telling Tyrell about his son, and then you find out in the next scene it was all complete bullshit. It was just brilliantly done. I really love what they're doing with this character, and this actor is doing an amazing job. So I absolutely love this character and that they've introduced him. And I would not have been sad if they had introduced him at the end of season 2, getting back to what we said earlier about they would have had to cast him, and just for that one episode, and I could understand logistics could be an issue or whatever. But I wouldn't have minded if he was introduced a little earlier. I think this character, it does seem, it's always a little weird when they try to insert a character who didn't exist in previous seasons into previous timelines. I think it's working fine. I mean, they're doing a good job of it as much as you can. But it always is a little bit weird to me when here's this brand new character. Oh no, he's always been here.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way they did it works really well because it's mainly he interacted with with Tyrell and Mr. Robot, and during the time that Elliot blocked out that he knew nothing, that he has no memory of, so it kind of makes sense that maybe Mr. Robot sort of had interactions during the time that we don't see what Mr. Robot's up to.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. They definitely did it as well as you could.
And I also love how like calm he is, like all the time. Like when Tyrell's freaking out that Elliot's dying, and he's just being, oh yeah, well, blah blah. Maybe you want to stop standing on him like that. It's just the way he's like has nerves of steel like that.
Yeah. So such a great character. Reminded me, the way it when his initial scene. When Tyrell called him, maybe you mentioned this in your review. I don't know. Somebody
talking
mentioned
about Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, yeah.
I mentioned
very
that.
much like the Harvey Keitel, like the clean. What was he, the cleaner or whatever?
I'm trying to remember. I can't even remember what they called him.
I think it was the cleaner.
Was it the cleaner? Yeah, it might have been the cleaner.
Not Mr. Clean. I think it was the cleaner.
The cleaner, yeah.
Or something like that. But yeah, it really, really reminded me a lot of that. And
and I think it works really well. And this is the other, talking about the other shoe dropping situation. Here's another thing. What's going to be Irving and the Dark Army's reaction when they find out about the sort of Elliot and Mr. Robot split, or more importantly, that the same guy who's helping them set up stage 2, in fact, stage 2 was his idea. During the day, he's actively trying to stop them from doing stage 2.
You never heard other reviews of podcasts and whatnot were wondering whether Irving and the Dark Army knows. I think it's pretty clear that they don't, and especially
absolutely,
episode 5 was confirmed it for sure when Irving was like, Angela, you got to go get Elliot to help you with this. He didn't know that there's 2 different Elliots. I thought that was 100% confirmation. But even before that, to me, it was pretty clear Irving did not know about Mr. Robot and Elliot, the split there. I don't think White Rose knows either. Like, I don't think the Dark Army has any clue about this.
Oh, yeah.
So it will be interesting to see what happens when if and when the Dark Army does figure out that there's 2 different Elliots.
I think the only people who knew were the 2 people who were closest to him, Angela and Darlene. And those were that no one else knows, and then of course
Tyrell knows.
Yeah, Angela now told Tyrell, so now he knows as well. But I think that's all. Yeah. That's the end.
And Krista, but she doesn't really. She's not involved in this.
Oh yeah, she doesn't know about the hacks or any of that. Yeah, but that does. Harvey Keitel is called the Wolf in Pulp Fiction. Okay. I'm not sure.
They also call him the cleaner or something too, though.
I think maybe the wolf was his name and the cleaner his title. I don't know.
I think the wolf was his name because I swear it was like the cleaner or something.
Yeah, could have. That sounds familiar.
It has been many years since I've seen that movie, even though I did see it 100 times back in the day. It's been a long time since I last saw it. But yeah. Yeah, with the Irving, wonder what, I think that could possibly happen. They could find out soon that the Irving and Dark Army could find out that there's this issue with Elliot, especially if he manages to stop stage 2 from happening. Because it seems like he knew when he was talking to Andrew, it's like, oh, we hit a snag. So the snag is obviously referring to the safeguards that Elliot put in place to stop them from doing stage 2. So it seems like at this point, they're not aware that Elliot is responsible for this snag, but it seems like, especially if he does manage to stop them, that they would be made aware of that. Yeah. Yeah, it does seem that way.
So it does make me wonder if maybe then White Rose will have to kidnap Elliot and take him to the room with the fish and show him.
I don't know. I think White Rose might just kill Elliot at that point. I don't know. Or want to kill him.
I don't know. I think he might need him. She might need him too much.
Yeah. And well, it depends on what stage 3 is.
That's true.
What comes after stage 2? Like what?
Well, it seems like if stage 2 was Mr. Robot's idea, it seems like he's very integral to the whole entire shebang.
But didn't White Rose pretty much say? I can't remember which scene it was, but he pretty much said that once Elliot, we don't need Elliot anymore. He can die for all I care. Like we can kill him then.
I don't. I remember her saying that about Angela. I don't remember her saying that about.
I thought he said that about Elliot too, but I don't know. I thought it was
maybe I'm wrong. maybe she did. I'm just not remembering it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like he was saying that to his assistant dude.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure it was about Angela though.
Well, he said that about Angela too, but I don't know. I have to go back and rewatch everything.
Yeah, yeah, could be. Maybe it's the case. Yeah, but it does. That also seems an interesting dynamic too. That Angela's talking about, striving. She's totally on board, but then White Rose herself just like sees her as disposable and just wants to kill her later.
Yeah. You ready to talk about some White Rose a little bit?
Let's go ahead. Let's talk about some White Rose.
It's interesting that I always thought it was ironic or interesting in last season where we have this main character who has a split personality, and then mirroring that we have White Rose, who also has a dual personality, even though he's very much aware of both persons. It's not like a multiple personalities thing, but he's got a dual personality. And in season 2, it seemed to me that it was pretty clear that Minister Chang or whatever was the official capacity of, this is the public face. This is the, whatever the hell he is.
Yeah, I can't remember. They said it at one point.
He's a minister, but I don't know what that means. I mean, he's not a priest, so I don't know what that means within Chinese government terms. But he's.
Well, I think they have specifically said his title before. I just don't remember what it is.
Besides minister?
Yeah, minister of something. He was the minister of something, and I can't. It's like a government administrator being like a government.
Kind of like the head of the Department of Justice or whatever. What do you call it?
Something like that.
Secretary. Yeah. In the U.S., we call him secretary. So he's kind of like the secretary of whatever, but they call him ministers.
Yeah, they call him ministers over here in New Zealand. So they probably.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what he is. He's a minister of something, and I always thought that Minister Chang or whatever was the official face, and then White Rose was the Dark Army face. But it seems to be mixed up a little bit more in this year. Like we see Minister Chang acting as Rose, basically, when he is like talking to that Fox News guy. That's a great scene, and the Fox News guy is very well casted, by the way. And I almost like swear that I actually have seen him on Fox News. Yeah. He's very well casted. But anyway, like I feel, I don't know have we even seen him dressed up as White Rose this season? I can't even recall. It seems like he's been the male version all year long is what I can remember. But there seemed to be a little bit more intermingled, the two personalities, than they were last season.
Well, it seems like the Minister Chang is just like sort of the facade that I'm not picturing it like an Elliot Mr. Robot split. It's just one person, but he puts on this facade of being the Minister Chang, but really it's White Rose. And you notice that Irving and everyone else always refers to White Rose as a she and her.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's because I thought of it as whenever he was in the Dark Army phase, he was White Rose. But when he was in the public face, like Chang, and like so, if he were to have a meeting with Irving or somebody in the Dark Army, he would be in White Rose get up. But if he needed to go out in public, he would be Minister Chang. But this year, I don't think we've seen him dressed up like White Rose, but he's still acting on behalf of the Dark Army.
Yeah, so I think ultimately there's just no distinction there. He's just pretending to be when he's alone he can put on and be White Rose, but that's who she always is, but she has to pretend, put on the Minister Chang makeup or whatever, but he can still act as White Rose in that capacity as leader of the Dark Army. And I want to go off on a tangent here about the Fox News guy, because I've seen so many, like 3 or 4 different podcasts, and I think it's become so common that people refer to him as an Alex Jones type, but I totally contest that, because Alex Jones is more of a loony and more of a conspiracy, and that guy doesn't come off like that to me. He seems more of like the calm conspiracy type, like I don't know, Sean Hannity or someone like that. Or
I think it was kind of Glenn Beck or
Glenn Beck. Yeah, although he doesn't cry, he's not as crazy as him either. But
I don't know. I agree with you. There's different levels of craziness with those right hosts. And Alex Jones is way out there, and this guy can more present himself more to the mainstream, where I feel like Alex Jones appeals to a certain segment of people, but like the mainstream people can't take him seriously, whereas like Sean Hannity or those type of people can maybe fool the people in the middle of the political spectrum a little bit more and seem like he's a reasonable person a little bit more than like not too far out there. So I think maybe he's a little bit, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. I think that's why it makes more sense calling him a Fox News guy, because it comes off as a very stereotypical Fox News guy.
He is on Fox News. Like they've shown it. He is.
Has they? Oh, okay, right. Well, and I think
actually is on Fox News in the Mr. Robot universe.
But what did you think of them saying that White Rose is responsible for pushing Trump as president? Like, I was actually surprised they did that, because I think they'd alienate like a lot of their fan base. But I suppose the show's always had a bit of a.
Well, I don't know. The whole show is about taking down the big corporation, and I feel like how many Trump supporters watch Mr. Robot anyway? I tiny little segment of their viewership that would get alienated, I feel like, but I don't know. I could be wrong, but
that was a bit cheeky. I guess I like that, but it was. I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't know. Maybe setting up parallel universe thing more. I don't know.
No, I thought it was pretty great, but we're still in 2015 in the Mr. Robot universe.
Yeah. That's when season 1 came out, yeah? So that's when season 1 was set. So yeah, it's actually moving very, very slowly.
It's kind of like Lost.
Remember Lost? That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Lost was in 2004 for like 4 or 5 years. Like it was it was 2008 in real life, and we're still in 2004. And then finally they did like a 3-year jump so they could catch up. So I don't think that's gonna work for Mr. Robot, though. I don't think you can do a time jump and be caught up in the year. I feel like they're just going to have to always be behind. But
one thing I did notice about season 3, though, is I think it was episode 3, or no, not 3, sorry, episode 2 or episode 4 maybe, where they're actually, I think maybe both of them, are actually jumping further in time than previous seasons has. Like one episode in particular said like it's been 4 weeks or it's been 3. I can't remember how long, but it's been like months or whatever, which is I think longer than they typically jump.
Well, they've done that sporadically. You have to really pay attention to see the time jump, because sometimes it's like the next day, and then all of a sudden 4 weeks later. Like,
yeah, which is good. I think I got the impression that they jumped a bit more in season 3 than they have in the past, which I think is really actually cool. This goes back to what you were saying about how. Stage 2 seemed to come out of nowhere. It's like, oh, they're ready for it already. I think it's because they're sort of pushing through that, and I really like that.
Well, Colonel 2 is when it really started jumping a lot, because there was like at one point in season 2 where they jumped forward, I think like a month, but then they kind of went back and filled in a little bit of the gaps. Like that Darlene episode was kind of a gap of the time.
Right. Yeah, so, because I think he was in prison for a couple of months, so they did do some jumping there as well. But yeah, Cardinal Doomsday says, I remember it was 4 weeks. Okay. But yeah.
4 weeks.
But yeah, we've seen, talking about people we see less of, we haven't seen that much of Price this season. And it seemed like I think some people make comparison to the White Rose Price scenes to like Littlefinger Varys scenes. They do seem to have that bit of a dynamic. And I'm actually happy to get less of Price. Again, it's not that I didn't like the character. I just think we got a bit too much of him.
Yeah. I can be on board with that. I did really like the Price and White Rose scene that we got this year. I think more than any of the ones that they had in season 2, personally, because they just cut the bullshit. Before it was always like Varys and Littlefinger, where there's all double speak and it's all undertones. Where as this scene this year, they were just finally like the gloves were off and they were like, "Fuck you." And I love White Rose's line in that scene where he or she was like, "Don't mistake my generosity for generosity."
Oh yeah, that was a cool line.
It was a great line because he's saying, "Don't mistake, my fake generosity for actual generosity."
Yeah,
just all the bullshit was cut. Like we're getting straight. Like fuck this. Like that's why to me that was my favorite scene between the two of them because. It did go a little bit too long with all the Varys and Littlefinger like double speak, and we aren't saying what we really mean, but we both know what we really mean, kind of thing. Where finally it's just like fuck that, we're just saying it how it is, and I thought it was great.
Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, I don't know. Like the thing I was wondering though about that scene is that White Rose was coming off like. He had all of the power and just like Price, you're this little insignificant ant and don't even bother me. But I wonder if that's actually the case, if maybe her bravado isn't actually justified, because after all, we're talking about the CEO of the most powerful corporation in the world in this universe anyway. So it seems like he's not the ant that you might think that he is.
Well, in the last season, he said that his goal is to be the most powerful man in every room that he walks into, and that's the case except for, I think he said 2 or 3 rooms or something. I forget exactly what he said, but I assumed White Rose was one of the people he was talking about. So Price at least thinks he's really high up there on the power scale, and White Rose sees it as Price is nothing. And so I think it's just a matter of each of their perceptions. The reality is they're both probably just super fucking powerful people, and they're probably pretty equal. And they're just I think you said in your review there was a penis measuring contest.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah,
that's basically like what it boils down to is they're both trying to outpower each other. But I think they're both pretty powerful people. It's just who has the upper hand in any given situation, and I think it's a lot of back and forth. So I think they both see themselves as more powerful than.
I think it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic play out. Like, I don't think that Price is the insignificant ant that White Rose thinks he is. So And I think it'll be interesting to see him if what he does to strike back, especially if the stage 2 does happen and he realized that the whole thing was an affront on him. And it was also interesting too that after Price confronted White Rose, she was just like, you know what? Fuck it. Fuck the Congo thing. Let's just go ahead with stage 2 because fuck that guy. That does like speak to her character as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but now can we talk about the Congo thing a little bit? I'm still like, I kind of get it. I mean, so
I've always avoided talking about it because I'm still not completely sure what's going on.
But let me be clear about that. What happened when they said that the Congo was annexed from China? That's the result White Rose wanted to have that. So White Rose got the result that she wanted. I think the Congo being annexed was, previously stage 2 was dependent on whether or not White Rose got what she wanted, and then she was like, "Fuck it, we're doing it regardless." But I think she did get what she wanted. I think the Congo being annexed is the way she wanted it to go. And
did they say it was annexed? When did they?
Yeah,
say
if you pay attention to the little news report, they kept showing the little news report on the elevator. they did say, "Oh, and the vote is that the Congo is now being annexed."
So, I didn't even notice that. I thought it was still being decided.
No, that has been official. It was on the little news report on the elevator that the Congo has been annexed. But I was trying to remember. That's what White Rose wanted, right? I think it was.
Oh yeah, I can't even remember if that. I'm pretty sure that's what she wanted, or did she want? I don't know.
I think that she did want the Congo to be annexed from China, but we still don't know why.
Like, well, I mean, I heard like some people were saying that it's because they wanted to run, like, just forget about the whole Washington Township plant and E Corp and just do it over there. And they needed an annex in order to do that. That's to have it like as an alternative backup. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm still not clear why originally Stage 2 was like they wouldn't need Stage 2 if the Congo was annexed.
I suppose because I don't know, maybe if they used the Congo, they wouldn't need E Corp at all, so they wouldn't have to worry about tearing them down first.
Yeah. And then it became spiteful. White Rose was like, fuck that. We're taking him down. Fuck him.
Now, I touched on this a bit earlier, but talking about the F Society, because it seems like another part of the gambit that White Rose or the Dark Army is pushing is to pretend that there's still an F Society that we know aren't, because the F Society was really only the 4 people. Oh, they had those frat guys in season 2, but they all got arrested.
There's the frat guys in season 2.
I think they got in a car accident too.
Well, remember, White Rose Minister Zhang was trying to tell the Fox News guy to push the idea that F Society has origins in Iran.
Yes,
and then the guy that was arrested, the F Society guy, they didn't say what his nationality was, but they could probably say he's Iranian or he's Middle Eastern in some way. So they could have like gotten that guy because that's pushing that story forward that the F Society has roots in Iran, which I don't know why White Rose wanted that story out there, but that's what she wanted.
I think it makes sense from it sort of demonizes F Society more in the American public's eyes.
Yeah.
Because people would be less willing to get on board if they find it they would think of it as like an Iranian terrorist plot or whatever, which is what I think she was going for. Now, why exactly? I'm not sure, but definitely is a push to take the spotlight off of Dark Army and put it on F Society, which is why Santiago keeps saying, focus on F Society, forget about Dark Army, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. Even though really it's quite the opposite. F Society doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly. which is really cool. It's a really interesting dynamic. I did want to point out that Colonel Doomsday solved our Pulp Fiction argument, saying that Winston Wolfe, aka the Wolf, is a cleaner who takes charge of the situation. So that's like a synopsis. So his name was the Wolf and his title was the cleaner. So
yeah, that's what I thought.
Cool. All right. So yeah, any other thoughts on White Rose, or can we just go ahead and wrap up?
Well, I think we're good with that.
Cool. Great. So so just any sort of final thoughts on season 3 so far and what we hope to see for the rest of season 3?
I think I've touched on this throughout the video that throughout this discussion that season 3 has been fantastic. I definitely want to see, what happens with the dynamic between Elliot and Darlene, Elliot and Angela. I want to see, and I feel like we're heading toward a Elliot and Dom DiPiero union at some point in time. I definitely want to see Santiago being discovered by Dom DiPiero, and I'm interested to see what we do get of this. Time travel, whatever thing. I think we need something by the end of the season. I don't think we need the full reveal, but I think we should at least see what White Rose showed Angela. I would love to see that by the end of the season, even if that doesn't fully explain. I mean, we might see that and be like, huh? What is it? What exactly does that mean? I mean, we might, but it would give a. I think that's kind of what I expect and would probably hope to see is we get a little more about that, but probably not 100% like full on everything about it by the end of the season.
Yeah, and I'm sort of agreement with you about that. I think, but as far as like, I don't think there's any one thing that like, oh, we have to see it or this season's gonna suck. There's nothing like that.
There's nothing that we have to see or the season's gonna suck.
Yeah.
There's things that I really want to see or they're gonna be marks against the season that I'm gonna be a little disappointed in. But I mean, like Santiago or which Dom DiPiero now finding out about Santiago. But if that doesn't happen, I could still end up giving the season a 10. So it's not like it's going to ruin the season or anything. It'll just be something that will like disappoint me. But it's not anything that would ruin the season.
Yeah, for me, I think the pacing this season has been amazing. And as long as they keep up this great pacing, don't have like filler episodes like getting conversations with Dom and her Alexa and Angela listening to self-help books. As long as they don't do bullshit like that, which they haven't been, then I'm going to be perfectly happy. And I think this is definitely easily on track to be the best season.
One last little question for you. When do you think we're going to when do you think we're going to get follow up on Trenton and Mobley, whether or not maybe they were killed early on, or if what's I mean, I think we would have to get an answer at least whether or not they were killed by Leon. I don't think they were.
It's funny. It's like the same time you asked that, Colonel Doomsday mentioned in the chat saying, I think Trenton and Mobley are toast in the next few episodes. And the sort of previews for season 3 before it came out, they did show like a clip of Leon like smoking a cigar, and it was different than what we saw in the flashback episode of Leon in prison. So it was something we haven't seen yet. So we know we are going to see Leon again. I don't know. I wouldn't be too surprised if it's just we discovered that he just killed them, but I hope it's not that. I hope they take it in a different direction, because didn't they end it with Mobley coming up with a plan to undo like the 5/9 hack?
Yeah.
So I think it would be more interesting if they followed that storyline.
Yeah.
And in fact, I wouldn't hate it if, like, one of the episodes they all of a sudden just stopped it and went back and did the Trenton Mobley episode, and we followed what they've been up to this whole time. That wouldn't bother me.
Yeah, no, I'd actually be okay with that too. Honestly, I think people would complain, but I wouldn't.
Colonel Doomsday says there's an episode upcoming called Frederick and Tanya.
Oh, there is. Which is was their. That was their aliases.
Was that their aliases? Oh, well, maybe that's exactly what they're going to do. And I think people might bitch about that, but I would be happy.
It will tie into the rest of the story. Like, we'll see maybe in the next couple episodes, we'll see mysterious things happening that in origin are coming from Trenton and Mobley, and we won't know until we see their episodes. So,
that would be cool. Yeah. Would be interesting. Cool. So, before I just really wanted to give a quick shout out before we end the discussion to that whole South Dakota thing about, Earl, I know you're in South Dakota. Like when that
was great. Yeah. That whole montage was fantastic. Like that whole, at the beginning, was that episode 2? That whole montage there was.
Yeah.
It was before the opening credits, that whole montage, and it was amazing.
Oh, was it? Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why episode 2 is like my favorite of the show so far. I think that was the best montage ever. So I want to see those guys pop up again, just in some comedic moment. And Colonel Doomsday says it's episode 7 is the
so 2 episodes from now. Oh, interesting.
Frederick and Tanya. All right, cool. So we'll go ahead and end our discussion here. So we'll be back at the end of the season for another discussion to close out the season. Akton Tamko, thank you so much for joining me. Just a quick shout out where people can find you.
Yeah, well, Akton Tamko's channel. I will admit I'm not doing as much as I used to, but I will do some Mr. Robot every once in a while. But I want to do some on Star Trek Discovery. I actually would like to, and within the next couple days here, I want to do a little chat on Stranger Things, because I just finished Stranger Things season 2, and I want to chat with you guys about that. So, and of course, if you're into Game of Thrones, you can watch all of my season 7 and season 6. You can go far back as you want. Season 5 reviews and my predictions and all of those things. Of course, I did my Star Trek. If you're into Star Trek, my Next Generation reviews, where I have reviewed every season of the Next Generation, episode by episode. So all kinds of cool stuff you can check out on my channel, even if I'm not necessarily making new stuff as much as I was. There's still great stuff for you to check out. I believe, Mark, we're going to do a Discovery discussion pretty soon here, aren't we?
Yeah, that's the plan. I want to talk to you about that. But yeah, definitely get into Discovery. Cool. So, yeah, as you know me, I'm Mark. This channel's Enchantment of Eternity. I do weekly reviews of covering Mr. Robot and Star Trek Discovery, and occasionally do the occasional Game of Thrones, Expanse, and other stuff videos. I'm also planning on doing a Stranger Things season 2 review. I'm actually in the middle of working on that, so hopefully I get that out this weekend. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.